All right, we're all set for Charmaine. Please take it away.
Okay, thank you for coming out today, everyone. This webinar will aim to introduce you to the different kinds of accessible reading technologies that exist and are available to people with print disabilities. To begin with, here's an outline of what we're going to be covering today. We will first begin by going over what print disabilities are by definition. And then we'll have a breakdown of what the term accessible reading technology actually means. And then we'll look at some examples of accessible formats and what they might amount to. And then we'll start to get into some different types of accessible reading technologies with demonstrations and videos to illustrate them. So it'll be like a survey of the different technologies that are available. You'll get a taste of things like text-to-speech programs and what they're all about. We'll get into some examples of literacy support software, Braille reading devices, screen magnifiers, daisy players, and more affordable audiobook players. We'll go over some voice-activated devices and some accessible reading apps as well. So a whole range of technology there. Then we will conclude the presentation by sharing some learning resources on where you can get more information or try some of these technologies out for yourself. So to begin with, a print disability is a condition that prevents a person from reading ordinary print. And in the Canadian Copyright Act, there are actually 3 types of print disabilities, and they're not an exhaustive list. There are probably more out there, but these are the types that specify the kinds of conditions that can legally qualify a person to have access to alternate format materials. The first are visual disabilities like blindness or low vision, as well as the inability to focus or move one's eyes. The second are physical conditions, or they're often called motor disabilities or motor challenges, such as cerebral palsy, severe arthritis, paralysis, or MS that prevent a person from holding a book or turning pages due to them being unable to effectively use their hands. The third kind of print disability is any impairment that relates to comprehension, like a learning disability, such as dyslexia is the most common one, where there are differences in the brain that prevent the person from processing or making sense of the print, even though they are able to visually see the print on the page. They need it in an alternate format in order to make sense of it, like audio format, for instance. So these conditions might be appear one at a time, so a person could just have one of them, or they might be combined. So for example, a person can have dyslexia along with a visual impairment, or they can be temporary, such as cataracts. So they won't be, if someone has cataracts, they won't be able to read print as it is in its original state. Now we'll look at what accessible reading technology really means. And the idea with this is that offering the content alone in an accessible format is only a small part of the process that needs to be implemented in order for materials to be truly made accessible to those living with print disabilities. It's often actually assumed that, oh, we just have to make our content accessible. We just have to make the books that we offer in accessible format, and that's it. But that's actually only part of the story, and a lot more needs to be done in order to make things truly accessible. So in addition to content being offered in accessible formats, the entire process of finding, acquiring, and reading the materials or books needs to be made just as accessible. So for example, this is not something that we often think about, but if we broke it down a little bit, the website or database or catalog or electronic system that's used to search for books, like the library's website or the ebook provider's website, for example, need to be designed with accessibility in mind, so that people who use adaptive technologies like screen readers or screen magnification programs, can easily access and use them. And also the players, apps, or devices used to read the content being offered must be made accessible and usable as well. Next, we're going to look at some examples of accessible formats. And one such example is called EPUB. And this is the standard non-proprietary ebook format that ensures that ebooks are made fully accessible in terms of their text content and book navigation. The most recent version of this kind of book called EPUB is known as EPUB 3, and it works with most updated accessible reading softwares and apps. It's managed and maintained by an organization called the W3C Consortium, which also manages the standards for website accessibility. This is something that is not often thought about as well, unless you work in the accessibility space. Websites also need to be made accessible. It is not just that it's digital and available on computers isn't enough to make websites or apps accessible. The next example of accessible format is DAISY, which is widely known. It's the format that is most often thought of, that's intended for use by those with print disabilities. It comes in human narrated audio format as well as text format that can be read aloud by a synthetic voice or with a refreshable Braille display, which we'll go over later. Books in this format are known as DAISY books, and they can be accessed via digital download or from a CD. And DAISY stands for digital, I think it stands for Digitally Accessible Information System. And audiobooks are another example of accessible formats. And they are often enjoyed by people regardless of whether they have a print disability or not. And I'm talking about commercially accessible audiobooks. But the main difference between commercially available audiobooks that you can get from places like Audible and other companies is that the audiobooks offered here at CELA come in DAISY format. And this allows for more detailed and precise navigation that doesn't usually exist in a commercially available audiobook. So usually when you play a commercially available audiobook, it just mainly allows you to play the book from start to finish, but there's very little control over if you want to navigate by chapter, by page, by paragraph, or by heading. These are made possible in this DAISY format. The reader has a lot more control over what's possible when you navigate through the book. And the last example of accessible format is Braille. And this is a tactile method for reading by touch by people who are totally blind or have partial sight, and can be embossed onto paper or read electronically with a Braille display, which you'll get to see in action later on. And finally, before we move on, it's important to note that the time it takes for something to be made accessible can vary quite a lot depending on what it is. Some materials like novels and other literary or text-based materials take less time. Whereas if you have books with graphics, pictures, tables, or math content, can take considerably longer because they are not often readily accessible from the publisher and they must be manually adapted, especially if they're going to be transcribed into a Braille format. If you are going to be transcribing a math textbook into Braille format, it can take almost 6 months to 1 year to make it, to adapt everything, including all pictures and graphs and math equations, because those things are usually also not accessible by screen reading technologies. Now, we'll move on to looking at some examples of some accessible reading technologies. We will start with screen readers. They've been around for many decades, and they form the basis for most other accessible technologies. So they're a good foundational point to start our survey into the land of accessible reading technologies. And these, what are screen readers? Well, they convert digital text normally displayed on the computer screen or on the tablet screen for others to see with their eyes. They convert that text into spoken words so that people with print disabilities can efficiently navigate and access content and interact with the content that's displayed on the computer screen or on their phone or on their tablet. And the interaction is done with keyboard commands. Most of these users, like myself, have to learn many keyboard commands to press rather than using a mouse pointer and doing mouse clicks to get around their computer and do what they need to do. There are many different kinds of screen readers. Some are free and some are paid, and some even come built into devices that they're compatible with right out of the box, which we really like. No need to install anything else. You just buy the product off the shelf and you can use it once you turn on the screen reader. An example of which I'll demonstrate a third-party screen reader in a minute. It's a paid screen reader that runs on a subscription fee. It's called JAWS, or Job Access with Speech. It works on Windows computers and it must be installed separately. Another screen reader for Windows is called NVDA, or Non-Visual Desktop Access. This is a free screen reader and can be installed onto any computer running Windows. And other examples that come built in right out of the box, that are built in right into the product, is VoiceOver, and that's Apple's built-in screen reader for Mac computers or iPhones or iPads. So if you have any devices like that around you, you have access to them, you can turn that screen reader on and try it out for yourself. It ensures that those devices come accessible right out of the box and no need to install anything else. And this is a good option for anyone to explore, whether they need a screen reader or not, if they want to try this out and experience the feeling of using a screen reader to navigate. So now I'll give you a quick demonstration of how a screen reader user like myself would use JAWS to launch the CELA website on a computer. And the browser I'll be using is Edge. I'm going to start out by sharing my screen, and I'll share my sound.
New button, new started screen share, press F6.
Now I've shared my screen, and I
Screen
will
sharing meeting
try
controls.
to
Share preview WMD.
explain
Lift.
what's happening.
Screen sharing meeting controls.
I'm going to be starting to press, I'm going to be doing a very simple task, which is going to Microsoft Edge.
Participants can now see your...
And I'm going to be going to Microsoft Edge and launching the CELA website. That's all I'm going to do. And how this is going to work is when a person uses a screen reader, they are not going to look around on their screen for Microsoft Edge and double click it. They're going to be pressing keyboard commands to get there. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is pressing a keyboard command to get me to the search box where I can type in Microsoft Edge.
Search box edit, type in text, computer Braille.
And the speed that you're hearing it at is the speed that's quite fast. It's what people normally have their screen readers set to talk at. So now I'm at the search box and I'm going to type in Edge.
Microsoft Edge, Microsoft recommended browser, press right to switch preview, Microsoft Edge, Microsoft recommended browser.
And so what it's saying, in case you weren't able to catch it, is it's saying Microsoft Edge. That tells me it's selected, and I'm going to press Enter to open it.
Enter. Sidebar is now visible. Address and search bar edit, blank, type in text.
Now I'm in the address bar, and it's telling me a bunch of information that I won't get into, but it's basically telling me I'm in the address bar and I can type in. And as you can see here, I'm going to type in the CELA web address now.
Blank.
And as I type, it'll tell me what I'm typing.
Period. CELAIBRARY. Period. C. A.
And then I'm
Enter,
going
loading page.
to get into this
Vertical bar cell
website.
dash Microsoft Edge data dash personal list of 3 items. Loading complete. Page has 5 regions, 17 headings and 60 links. There are 5 smart glance highlights on this page. Vertical bar cell heading level 2. Service alert heading level 3. Newspapers.
And so what happened when I typed in CELAlibrary.ca is that JAWS started to read aloud in the same way that you would start to see the contents of the homepage. And if had I let it, it would continue to read from the top to the bottom. And so now you might be wondering, well, what happens from there if it just keeps on reading? And the idea is that you can press different keyboard commands to control what's being read aloud. So if I press the letter H, for instance, it would move me to the first heading.
Center for Equitable Library Access heading level 1.
That says Center for Equitable Library Access. And then the commands just go on from there, basically. So I'm going to close the browser now.
Alt F4. JAWS Home Manual.
I'm going to go back and stop sharing my screen.
Apps. Screen sharing meeting controls. To move to an item, press the arrow keys.
So I've stopped sharing my screen, and as you can see just from that, it reads everything out quite literally that I need to know in order for me to use the computer. So it's not just reading the text or, you know, parts of web pages. It's reading every single button. It's reading every single link or program and giving me hints on what I need to do to respond to what's being read out loud. The next example of accessible reading technology is literacy support. And these are for people who have literacy needs that will, it's almost like they need some help in making acquiring the knowledge of learning how to read and write to be made more accessible. So it's not just viewing the text or having the text read aloud. These are people who need more help with knowing what words are and meanings of words and making the process of reading and writing and comprehension a little bit easier for them. So there is a software, it's called, it's made for Google Chrome, made from Google Chrome, which you can use to try it out if you want to experience it. It's called the Read and Write software. And we're now gonna look at a video of a teacher using it to read a PDF document, and we'll see what that's all about.
Hi, I'm Jamie Keat at Teachers Tech. Tonight we're going to take a look at an add-on called Read and Write for Google Chrome. This is a great program to boost confidence for reading and writing in students. So stick around for a full tutorial. One of probably my favorite feature is the readback feature because I find it eliminates the long lineups I have at my desk all the time. And so how it works is in a couple different ways, and you can change the settings here. So if I just go from the start here and hit play,
the rainforest likely formed during the Eocene era.
And I'll just pause it there. You can see if I pause it, the yellow stays there, the highlighted, but if I stop it, it goes away. So if I didn't like the way it sounded, if I wanted a different voice, all I have to do is go to my settings, and I can see if I wanted it all of a sudden in a UK voice, and I'll go with Serena here, and I'll turn it fast here, hit OK, and I'll just go back to it and hit play one more time.
The rainforest likely formed during the Eocene era. It appeared following a gloom.
And I'll just stop it there because I think you get the point of how that works. So another way we can do the readout is if you just go to the screenshot reader right here. So if I select the screenshot reader, I can now just pick a certain area that I want read. So if I highlight right there, it's going to just load it up here and just say that
when
sentence.
The climate was drier in Savannah.
And it will just only say that one. So again, if I want it off, I can just turn it off like so. So those are some kind of cool features that I probably use all the time. The students, it's nice to have headphones in your class so you don't get overwhelmed with all the different readbacks that are happening and all the different accents, because the students do like to change their the accents on their readback. So another cool feature I find is the highlighting here. So if I take a word like, whoops, I better turn off my screenshot reader here. If I go over to, let's say, whoops, I turn on the wrong things here. My mouse is kind of stuck inside this one. I don't want this on anymore. All right, there it goes. So if I highlight a word like rainforest, and then go up to highlight here and then just highlight like so. Then you can see that it's in yellow. If I don't want it anymore, I can just highlight it again and then clear the highlights. So if I highlighted a few different ones, I'll just do it in a few different colors just to give an example here. If there was words or I was looking for to make a list from, and I'm just going to pick two. You can see what I was trying to do. I could go through and pick a few more colors, but if I wanted to create a list on a separate page of those words, all I need to do is hit collect highlights. So it asks me what colors. I'm just going to hit OK here. And what it's doing right now, it's going to create me a new Google Doc here that shows the highlighted words that I have here, and also gives me a link back to the original Google Docs here. So if a student was going to do a vocabulary list from this, it'd be a great way to start. But an easier way to do a vocabulary list with those same words, I won't change that around, is if I just go over here to vocabulary list, and this time, this will take about a couple seconds longer here, it's going to create a brand new Google Docs here. And you see what it can do here is, it's still loading up here. There it goes. Okay, so it has the rainforest, it even puts the symbol in here and creates it in a nice table format for students to get a vocabulary list. So if they were going through and not understanding, or if you ask them, even from a website, they can do this, and I'll show you this in a little bit. It's all with the same icons that we have at the top, but you can use it as an extension on a website too. So those are some, I find, like I said, really a PDF file. So I'm just inside my Google Drive right now, and I have this short stories for children here that I'm going to open up. It's a PDF file. You just can't click on it unless you have your settings set as default. So for instance, I can right click on this, or if I was going to open this here, if I just click on it, I can see it open with my read and write, so I could do that option too, or you could right click and then open with and pick read write. The other thing is you could change your settings in here and go to manage apps, and then what you can do is click on use by default if you're opening in that all the time. And then so once you open up this one, it's going to convert it with Google Read Write. And what you notice, a lot of these things are the same in it. So if I have my read back features the same way in it. If I want to hit play and have it read, this is the feature that you can see how this box is opening up with all the highlight features and the translate features. If I don't want that to show up, I can just turn it off right here, but I can hit my play here again. And there's a couple other options that you have in this, and that's through
Okay, so we actually didn't show the whole video, but mainly that should give you a pretty good idea of what this read and write software is all about and what it does. We'll actually share the PowerPoint with all of the participants at the end of the presentation, and that will have links to the videos in their entirety if you want to play them or replay what we've shown now. The next kind of accessible reading technology is called a refreshable Braille display. And what those devices are they're basically, they can be thought of as like Braille computers. I think that's the easiest way to think about something like that. They're devices that allow for text or Braille files to be displayed in a Braille format. So something like a Word document or a PDF or any kind of file type can be opened up on one of these devices and displayed, and the words will be displayed in Braille for people to read by touch with their fingertips. So instead of you or any sighted person looking at a monitor, they would be feeling the words in Braille on this device. And depending on the kind of display being used and the size of it, you're not looking at a big monitor where you can see all the pages all at once. Only a single line of text or a few words can usually be displayed to the user at one time. And the user has to repeatedly scroll down through a document line by line to have the display refresh and show the next block of text to be read. So for instance, to give you an example, I'm doing this presentation right now with a Braille display, and I'm reading my notes, and it's displaying, you know, let's see, I'd say about 10 words at a time, and I'm having to read these words and press a button to advance to the next 10 words or so for it to display. And so it's constantly, I'm constantly having to scroll down. And these devices are quite costly. In fact, they cost above $2,000. And in most cases, there's currently a lot of work being done in the Braille technology space to make these devices bigger and more affordable, to ensure that people can read more than one line of text at a time. They're looking at making multi-line Braille displays, and also to ensure that these devices can be placed in the hands of more people who could really benefit from having access to them. So let's look at a video now, which will help to make the concept of using a Braille display make more sense and put it into context a little bit.
All right, this is Allison Hilliker, and she is going to show us what a Braille display looks like working with an iPhone. And what's the model here, Allison?
This is an iPhone 4S, and this Braille display is called a Refresher Braille. It's made by the American Printing House for the Blind, the Braille display is.
All right.
And so Braille is a combination of, each letter is made up of a combination of 6 dots. And so I have dots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on here. And if I wanted to make an A, I'd press 1. If I wanted to make a B, it's dots 1 and 2. C is 1 and 4. D is 1, 4, 5.
Okay,
and so on.
that would correspond to these little dots we see sticking up right here, right?
So what I'm going to do here is I'm in Tweetless right now, which is a Twitter app on the iPhone.
Okay.
And so this is my Braille display is connected to my iPhone via Bluetooth right now. And so
Now I don't see Tweetlist open on your iPhone, which is interesting.
Now you do.
There it is. Okay.
It wasn't open yet. I was on my home screen.
Okay.
And
no private tweets to be seen here, so.
Oh, good.
I hope not.
Okay, it says Alley Talk. I can actually turn the speech off if you want to.
No, that's okay.
Here's a compose button, so I'm going to press this. This little button here is like a joystick. I can move it to the right to move the display forward and read what's next, or I can move it to the left to go backward and read the previous thing I'm looking at.
Oh, okay.
So, if I want to press this button, I'm going to press the button that I was just moving around.
Text field.
It says text field is editing, so.
Okay, so that was a little bit, hopefully that would give you a little bit of an idea of what a Braille display would look like in action. Next, we'll look at screen magnification programs, or screen magnifiers. These are for people who still have some remaining sight that's functional, and for people who still who can still read print if it's just made a little bit bigger, or if the color contrast is made differently, they can still read print. They don't need to resort to Braille. And these screen magnifiers are devices that allow for users with partial sight to have text and images enlarged and made more visible by changing the color contrast. An example of there are examples of these like standalone magnifiers, where you put whatever it is you want enlarged underneath it, like something on paper, some text to put underneath, and then it would just enlarge it. But there are also computer programs that enlarge digital material that's on a computer screen. And an example of a common computer program that does this is called Zoom Text, which we'll show you a video of in a minute. And it also has some basic text-to-speech capabilities that are nowhere near as advanced as screen readers that I showed you earlier. But the text-to-speech on these programs, like Zoom Text, they serve only the function of reading the text aloud. So it doesn't speak aloud The buttons that the users need to use to interact with what they need to do on their apps or on their programs, they mainly function to read aloud what the user selects, which is the text of what they're reading. And it's for people who would like to have the text displayed visually for them to see, and they also need it to be read out loud, like if they were reading larger blocks of text, for example, to give their eyes a break, they'll need it to be read aloud, or they might need to see it at the same time to really get what's being said there. So let's look at a video now to illustrate this software. And this video will show a program called Zoom Text Fusion.
Reach for an arrow.
It's basically a program that's running in conjunction with the JAWS screen reader to act as, where JAWS is acting as text to speech. So now we'll look at what that's all about.
In this section, I'm going to be introducing you to the idea of Zoom Text Screen Magnifier. In this case, within the Fusion, Zoom Text Fusion product, which is a combination of Zoom Text Magnifier with the JAWS screen reading program. So I'm just looking here at a computer screen, unmagnified. I've got Zoom Text Fusion running at the moment, but with only 1x magnification here.
1. Decrease zoom level button.
So to increase the magnification, I could just use the mouse pointer.
Increase zoom level button. Click on the Fusion 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8. Zoom level button.
And now you'll see
list item,
that
not checked.
You'll also hear it speaking in the background. That's the Fusion JAWS speaking in the background there. But the screen is now magnified 1.8 times, and we can of course go larger than that. I'm actually going to use the keyboard to do this now rather than the mouse. I'm going to press the caps lock key with the up arrow. Caps lock is the Zoom text key, and the up arrow is to indicate that we're increasing the magnification.
2. 2.25, 2.5, 2.75.
And here we are at 2.75, and as we go up to say 3, now we're seeing just 1/9 of the whole screen because we're at a 3x magnification. So if you imagine the screen divided into like sections, there would be 9 rectangles that make up the entire screen. We're seeing just 1/9 of that when we're at 3x magnification. This is the issue for people that use screen magnification. They can't perceive the whole screen at once. They have to either slide their mouse pointer, which I'm going to do now, to an edge of the magnified screen, which will then scroll under their eyes for them like this.
Start button.
I can slide across the screen using my mouse pointer. I can also control the computer just by using the keyboard. So for example, if I press the start button on the computer keyboard,
search box edit,
I can type W-O-R-D.
Microsoft Word 2010 desktop app. Microsoft Word 2010 desktop app.
You'll notice there's a focus rectangle around the menu item, and as I use my enter key, we'll
cancel
be
button.
Magnifying.
Okay, so that was basically a little bit of an idea of how Zoom Text works, and how somebody would use screen magnification. I'm now going to hand this over to Iwana, who's going to be talking about some more technologies and demonstrating some of them for us. She'll start with Daisy Players and go on from there.
Audio now unmuted. Start my video. Video now started.
Hello, everyone.
Stop my video button.
It's a pleasure to be here. Jessica, can you just please confirm that I'm
CELA member services
showing the
has
right
stopped screen
video in terms of the, yeah.
Yep, it looks good.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, so I would like to talk to you now about what is called the Daisy Players. Charmaine has already mentioned to you the Daisy format, the Digital Access to Information System, which allows navigating through pages, through chapters and subchapters.
CELA member services has.
Sorry, I will mute my phone.
Cap C. Charlie, speech off.
Okay. And these players are probably the most popular players that you might, as librarians, have heard about, are the DAISY players from Humanware, which is the most used brand in Canada. They can be either players like the one you see on the screen, which can use CDs, DAISY audio CDs, and also have access to internet. And then there are smaller players, such as the Victor Stream, which is a more pocket-sized player that only has access to internet and does not support CDs. These players, like all technology that's specially made for people with print disabilities, are quite expensive. They have like the Braille displays and the software that's specially created. They run in the, I think, $600-700 range. So we have actually now added to our repertoire of supported players a new player, which you are seeing in my video. And this one is called the Envoy Connect. It's a low-cost player that costs around $100. It, I think, is a very interesting middle choice. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles of the DAISY players, in such as speed control of the audio, or you cannot actually really navigate in a hierarchical, you don't see the different levels and sub-levels, you see every single track of the book at the same level. So it has some limitations, but it also has some great advantages. It integrates very well with, it doesn't have on its own access to internet, but you can download software called CELA Connect that we have developed, and it's available free on our website. And in fact, if you're interested, you could probably download it even without having the player and play around with it, because what this software does is it allows you to manage books on the player. It connects very smoothly to your account or the patron's account, whoever it's registered in. And you can also, because it's such a small player, we also let people send it in by mail and have it reloaded by the CELA personnel, and then we send it back. So for people that are used to always receiving their books by mail as CDs, they can do that as well with this player. So it's an interesting hybrid, I would say, between a low technology solution that's more low cost, but it also still has the accessibility of each button is clearly marked, and you can recognize them by touch as well, and you get audio feedback for every operation of the player, as you shall see in a moment. So I will demonstrate the player a little bit. I will press the power and play button, which you can see it's the biggest button, and the first time I touched this player, immediately it was clear to me that this will be the button to press, so I'm going to hold it down. Okay, so we shall now hear the...
A Tree is a Plant by Clyde Robert Bulla. Book number DV 57883. Copyright 1960.
Unfortunately, I cannot stop that beginning. So every time you start the player, it will play the first few seconds of the last book we were reading. And this happens. So now if I move over above the play button, we have the bookshelf button. And this button, if we press it repeatedly, it will cycle through all the books that are available on the player. I should note that we have 8 gigabytes of storage here, so there is plenty of room, especially for audio. And you can even add an SD card.
Envoy Connect Quick Start Guide. Last updated
so this is another
March
book.
2020.
A Tree is a Plant.
Okay, so I just have 2 books here.
Book number
and
DV 57883.
we have to listen to this again.
Copyright 1960.
Right, thank you. So if I had more books, of course, it would cycle through all the books and then start over again. I will now demonstrate, for example, the sleep button, or like I can even hear the battery status, which normally you would need to have a sight to watch the LED status of the battery, but if I hold down the back button, I will hear 3 beeps, which tell me that the battery is high. So in other words, every operation is accessible. I will now start the playback and demonstrate. You can play and pause, and I will skip forward by pressing quickly the forward button, and it will jump to the next section.
This apple tree came from a seed.
Actually, I will go backwards.
A tree is the big Library of Congress annotation.
I'm pressing the back
tree
button.
Is a plant.
Now I'm at
By
the
Clyde
very beginning.
Robert Bulla. Book.
I press the pause and play button again, and so this demonstrated I actually navigated backwards. I could also go forwards the same way. I will demonstrate now that you can also fast forward within a section, and I will start playback and you will hear a bunch of beeps. Every beep is 30 seconds of that, and it indicates that we skipped 30 seconds.
A tree is a plant. By Library of Congress and from
so
the book jacket.
We just skipped a minute. So this gives you an idea about how this book works. This player works. So it is an interesting intermediary solution, not as advanced as the full-fledged DAISY players, but certainly a great portable option that integrates in a low-tech, you need relatively few technical knowledge to connect to CELA. So it very smooth integration. Now I will mention a bit about another new technology that is emerging for accessible reading. And this one is really an adaptation of a technology that is a mainstream technology, and we're talking about the voice-activated devices such as the HomePod, the Alexa devices. I hope nobody has any Amazon speakers lying around, or the Google devices. And these offer great potential because they are user-friendly. You can talk to them so you don't need to remember any complicated shortcut keys, or also for people with motor limitations. It is a great tool. And already, in fact, Alexa has good integration with Audible and other, actually mainly with Audible because it's Amazon's platform of choice for commercial audiobooks. But it also allows libraries such as CELA to build their own skills that allow delivery of audiobooks and other accessible material but mainly audiobooks, whether it's human narrated or text-to-speech, some of them. So CELA is currently working on the skill. It's not yet currently available. That was the Envoy Connect turning off. It's not currently available, but we think, and we've heard from other libraries, that the adoption rate can be quite high, and people enjoy being able to listen to their books on their smart devices, on their smart voice-activated devices, smart speakers. Now, I would like to discuss another aspect of mainstream technology, and these are the accessible reading apps. Once a device is made accessible, such as you have seen with a computer, with a screen reader, or similarly with VoiceOver, and in fact I encourage you to experiment with if you ever want to find out more, because all the smartphones and tablets have some form of screen reader and accessibility adaptations baked in. A note of caution: if you do try to use VoiceOver or TalkBack for Android, make sure that you know how to turn it off, because all the gestures that you would normally use are changed, so you don't want to be stuck in limbo. So once we make the device accessible, then we have the option of using all sorts of apps. This is a solution that, of course, might require a steeper learning curve for your patrons, but it also has more rewards, because once you know how to use a smart device, it opens other avenues. You have accessible apps such as, of course, Audible, or even Apple Books or Kindle work quite well. Assuming the books are, I have downloaded a Kindle book that just was scanned images, and that was absolutely unusable. So the books have to be in EPUB or some other accessible format that Charmaine mentioned, but it probably EPUB, or basically it cannot be scanned images. Otherwise, those apps will not work for you. But the two most, and then there are the specialized apps that read the DAISY format, which is a specialized format for that we discussed before. So they would be the equivalent, basically, of the DAISY players, except that they are apps on our smart devices. I will now demonstrate. There are two main ones that are very popular, are Easy Reader and VoiceStream Reader. Each has their advantages. Easy Reader is free, and it has good integration with CELA. It makes it very easy to search books right within the app, and to consult your virtual bookshelf, where you can place in advance, or the librarian or any support person can place books for you in that bookshelf, and we have easy access to that bookshelf within the app. It reads DAISY books, whether it's text with synthesized speech or audio books that have their own human narrated books, and I will show it to you a little later. The other great alternative is VoiceStream Reader. It doesn't integrate as easily with CELA. You can still add books right to the app, but you would need to navigate on a web browser-like interface, and you have to log in, put in your username and password every time. So it is less user-friendly in terms of adding books from CELA, but it has, as you will see, a very elegant interface. I would say it's in some ways more robust. It has very interesting adaptations for font and focused reading for people with dyslexia and other related disorders. So these are the two. It is also, I should say that VoiceStream is not free. It is available now only by subscription. It was a recent change, and I wasn't able to find out exactly how much it costs because I already have the app. So every time I try to check, it tells me that I already have the apps. But it is, I think it's around $60, $70 a year. And all these apps, of course, allow people to read using their Braille displays as well, as a side note. I will now demonstrate the Easy Reader app. Let me try to stop the video. Oh, okay.
Speech on. Active speaker avatar. White captions. Record. Share. Chat. Raise my hand. 8 participants. Stop my video. Button.
Stop the video.
Now stopped.
I will now share my
Mute
screen
audio.
so I can demonstrate the use of the Easy Reader app. Okay, you should now be seeing my Zoom screen. I will open the Easy Reader app.
App switcher. Voice stream. Easy Reader. Active. Picture-in-picture displayed. Easy Reader 257.
Yes, please let me know if there's any problem with seeing the app. So Easy Reader, note that I'm using VoiceOver, so all my gestures are modified. In order to select anything, I will double tap, and I can swipe left and right to cycle through the different controls on the screen. I will demonstrate the integration with CELA.
Video. Video. Post book information. Side menu. Button. Side menu. My books. Manage. CELA library.
So right away I have put it at the top.
Waiting for ellipsis. CELA library. Log out. Direct to player bookshelf.
It remembers my login info, which makes it much easier for a patron that doesn't need to worry about remembering their credentials.
Direct to player bookshelf.
I could use
log out. Search or browse.
Search or browse.
Search or browse. Keyword search.
I could ask a keyboard search, and I would need to type in a term.
Browse by category.
I could also browse by category.
Browse by category. Canadian authors, fiction.
You know, so I could double tap on
Canadian
this
authors,
one.
loading, ellipsis.
You would see all sorts of
hunting by stars.
So I could now double tap and borrow a book, for example.
Return to Jauna, White Oaks, Mazo de la Rup, Return to Jauna, Return to Jauna, White Oaks of John and Suckback, book and Return to Jauna, Mazo de la Rup, borrow, button.
So I will double tap on borrow.
Please wait.
And the book should be added
Download button.
It should be added to my bookshelf.
Begins during World War. Open as stream button. Back button.
I will
back
now
button.
go back. I
Back
don't
button.
want to start
Return
downloading
book
the book.
information. Return to JAL.
I will return to the books that I already have downloaded. Going up.
Back button. Back button. Side menu. Side menu. Button. Side menu. Canadian
There
authors.
we go.
Fiction. My books. Button.
My books.
Please wait. Empty list. Walk. Nouvelle. Michel Jean. Daisy.
Okay, so these are books that I have already downloaded on my device.
Walk. New book. Poussières D. Book. Patience. Don't eligible.
I'm looking for a
Dialogue sous les
book that we
book.
could...
Patience. Don't eligible. Dialogue sous les book. Vendredi.
Really?
Book. Vendredi. Wool omnibus. Silo Wolser.
Okay, here we go.
Loading. Ellipsis. Please wait. Alert. CELA close button.
Oh, this one didn't want
Wool
to
omnibus.
load.
Silo Wolser.
This is why I mean sometimes it works. It's quite elegant with the interface, but
Book
it
information.
is a little
book
more
information button.
more
Book information. Wool omnibus.
finicky.
Book information button. Vendredi. Wool omnibus. Silo
Why
Wolser.
doesn't it want to play
Loading.
the book?
Ellipsis.
That would be a pity.
The title is being processed and will be available. Close
Well,
button.
yeah, it
Wool omnibus.
should be
Book.
available.
Vendredi. Less limbs
Let's try
capacity.
another one. It might be in
Play.
French though. Okay, well
Use
this
the
one
rotor to
plays.
access 15 seconds. 2 minutes.
So as you can see, we have we can control the speed. We have different buttons for navigation.
Navigation settings button. Next. Book default button. Play. Previous. Book navigation button.
I could, for example,
Selected.
show
Headings.
you all
button.
the different
3.
headings.
Level 1.
I could
55
go
minutes.
straight
39
to-
seconds. 3. Play.
And now,
Use the
for
rotor to
example, I
access
can play
15
and
seconds.
stop.
2 minutes.
Chapitre 3. Robinson consacra les semaines qui suivirent à l'exploration méthodique.
Okay, I paused, and I can change the speed.
2 minutes. 15 second language. Default. Words. Character. Audio. Heading 1 on audio speed. 225%.
Okay, that's very fast.
125%.
So you can see I can control the speed and then resume playback. So this gives you a sense of how the Easy Reader app works. I'm not sure how we're doing with time. I could give you a quick, the advantage. Maybe I don't think we'll have time to show you the VoiceStream Reader app. What that one does very well, it has, the controls are nicely represented for people with using VoiceOver. So the play button, if you swipe on it, it also becomes a speed control button. So in other words, you don't have to go and find many different buttons. One button performs multiple functions, which can be useful or confusing depending on the type of patron you're dealing with. It has great, you can annotate, you can select text, export, highlight, a little bit like you would do in the read and write app. You can touch the screen. You can turn, if you don't have VoiceOver enabled, you can enable finger reading so that you can touch a word and have it read out loud for you. So again, people with learning disabilities can take advantage of those kind of features. I should mention that there is the Speechify app that is popular for people using dyslexia. It is also, I don't know it as well because I haven't tried it using VoiceOver, but it is also a subscription app. So this gives you a bit of an overview of how one could use accessible reading apps, specialized accessible reading apps on your smart device, smart tablet or phone. Moving on, I will now talk to you a little bit about people with physical challenges, and we can have a look at what kind of adaptations they use in order to have access to print. So first of all, like we said, of course, the voice-activated devices
Alert.
can be an
Screen
interesting...
broadcasting.
What's happening here?
Live broadcast. OK. Button.
Okay.
Image. 3, 7 of 18.
So...
Use the rotor to access
sorry,
15 seconds.
my phone is
Speech
chatting.
off.
Okay, so we could... There are modified keyboards, and in fact, one of the things that you probably already might have encountered by accident, we have the sticky keys for people that have trouble pressing multiple keys at once. On your computer, if you press the Shift key multiple times in Windows, it will offer to activate this function that instead of having to press, let's say, Alt, Control, Delete all at once, you could press them one at a time. And so this way you get around the limitation or the challenge of pressing multiple keys. That's why they're called sticky keys. You have modified keyboards that can suit people's needs. They can be either larger or adapted to being used with one hand. We can use handheld switches that can be connected either to your computer or to your tablet or phone. They're called switches, and they can be adapted to be activated with various body parts, and you can even use what is called sip and puff technology. So you can have a type of switch that you can use. It's kind of like a straw, and you can inhale or exhale, and this is how you move the activate the switch left and right, or back and forth, back and forward. You have voice dictation, of course. We all know the Siri dictation to some extent, but there are, Dragon Natural Speaking, and also voice control on the iPhone and its equivalent on Android that allow you to to execute commands and select different controls or apps or icons on the screen using only your voice. It has a bit of a learning curve, but basically it allows you to use any app without needing to touch your device. Eye gaze technology, so eye tracking is also a good option for people to control their devices. And so these are several adaptations that can be used to read accessibly. We have here finally further resources. I know we covered a lot of material, so you can come back and have a look in more in depth. CELA has a great page about compatible devices, and where it gives you an overview of all the different types of devices that can be used with CELA's materials. We have CELA's accessible formats page, which goes over the various formats that we have discussed today, be it DAISY, EPUB, Braille, and others, and also gives you an overview of which devices can be used to read these formats. We have an interesting research about accessible publishing resources, so guidelines about how to create what we call born accessible books, and guidelines for publishing books that are accessible. The same with inclusive publishing, and there are also Bookshare. It classifies various tools for various disabilities, and they have ratings for usability for various apps. So I hope this gives you a sense of what is available, and I will pass it over to Jessica, and looking forward to hearing your questions.